Okay, delve right in on paintings of women, genre paintings, 17th century Dutch, but only of women. Wanted to make this point that women were had different roles in the Netherlands than they did in other countries, and mainly um, because of the economy, and men were often out trading on the seas, that women were expected to stay at home and actually run the home in some ways by themselves, and sometimes run a business at home. Their role was very important and actually, again, a source of some anxiety since they were often left alone. In any event, you see that sometimes in the painting, so we'll just go through a few. Here is, you can see who this is, a woman who is making lace. Now, Dutch women were supposed to keep their houses very clean, and you can see that here, that this woman is taking a break after cleaning the house. But she's picked up some other domestic labor. She is making lace. She's tatting. This is a kind of lace making machine. Um, but there are things around that suggest that, well, maybe she's thinking about something else though. She's got her shoes off. Okay, so that suggests that she's here staying at home. But also on the floor, kind of in a comparable position, are two mussel shells. Shells were often a symbol for those who can make their home on the road. That is to say, those who wander. So in some ways, although we have a very domestic scene, a woman clearly bound to this house, there's a tiny, tiny sort of reference to the idea of of wandering. It is enforced by the idea that we have a print on the wall. Again, a print is a, a, a way to reproduce a painting. It's not as expensive as a painting. There are many copies of these prints. And it is of a little scene. It's actually the flight of Mary and Mary and Joseph into Egypt. It's a pretty famous painting, and again, there would have been copies of it, prints of it, that this house could afford to buy. But so in any event, this woman has has above her a reference to a family on the run, a family who is journeying very far away from their home to Egypt. So again, a situation of domesticity, but also references to um, to moving far away. We see something similar but a little different. This very famous Dutch painter Vermeer, who we'll deal with next week in a different way. Here's a woman in the house. Clearly, she's the mistress of the house, and here is a servant. You can tell by their dress. And again, they've both been cleaning the house. You can see that. Again, there's stuff here that makes you think that they've been cleaning. But the woman has taken a break to make music. And again, in the foreground, so we're looking at her through the door, but in the foreground we see, we see some music. And again, we see her with the guitar, I guess that is. She's been given a letter. Her maid gave her a letter. Letters are always referenced to that communication, probably from an absent husband, perhaps from a lover. And that is reinforced by these, this is a seascape behind, again, a reference to people being far away. Um, and so we're left to kind of like ponder with the meaning of this. Um, is this woman, I mean, she looks kind of startled. There's an exchange there between the mistress and the maid. Um, is the mistress playing music from a lover who is gone absent, a husband who has gone absent, a lover who has come present while the husband is absent? A little unclear. So this is how we unpack meaning in these Dutch paintings about women. Again, a kind of an anxiety about women's roles here. Women were expected to have sex with their husbands. This is something different from the Catholic perspective. You know, there were manuals for wives in the Catholic countries, and they talk about sex as only for procreation. But the Protestants understood that sex was an obligation. Um, uh, Something consensual between husband and wife, and of course, children could be an off, you know, um, could be a product of that, but the sexuality of women was given a little more attention in the Netherlands. But actually, I guess we don't really need to see that in this. Actually, we don't see it in this painting. What we see is a woman being a mother. She's just finished breastfeeding a little child here. We know that she has another child. She's clearly taking care of her house in really good order. And you can also see how houses are decorated. Again, very clean. And then paintings on the wall. A kind of common subject is this one. It's called The Lovesick Girl, or sometimes it's called The Doctor's Visit. A lot of artists of the day, and again, there are many out there because they need to produce paintings for, again, this great demand of small paintings for houses. But even a typical subject is this. It's the woman who is needing doctor's attention. She's swooning. She's not feeling well. And always the question is, why is this woman not feeling well? She's probably an unmarried woman. Perhaps she perhaps she has a lover at hand or not. Here we see her reading a letter. Maybe she's just been stood up by that guy, and this puts her in a tizzy. Maybe she is pregnant. And the reason why I say that is because often these doctor visits paintings have a few things in common. There would be a string on the ground. There'll be a hot pot, a sort of, and this is the age in which there was a belief in what's called the wandering womb syndrome, that women could wombs, their uterus, in other words, could go a little crazy and wander up and down, and a way to combat that, to settle it down again, so that they, can return to normal and unsick lives, is to tease it out with a hot string to like sort of draw it down into its normal position. I know that sounds crazy. It is a little crazy, but in any event, you do see these kinds of early medical devices dealing with women's issues in these paintings of The Doctor's Visit or The Lovesick Girl. And there are all kinds of things to suggest that, again, the reason why she's sick has to do, the hysteria of romance, either good or bad romance. But also, I'm sorry, I just lost my thought there. Oh, other evidence to suggest that this is what the paintings are about. If you look up here, for example, you see a little statue of Cupid. Here, a painting of like two naked, probably a mythological painting actually, which is a little unusual, but maybe two Cupids. I'm not sure what's going on in that painting, but definitely nakedness. Lastly, women were expected to again to have a role in the economy. So sometimes they would be out there selling. Now these kinds of scenes of women actually doing selling, really interacting with the public, are, suggest a high degree of anxiety about that. Usually it's an older woman, but not always. Here you can see an older and a younger woman. They're selling poultry, dead rabbits, dead fowl. And even as this is going on, again, if we read it kind of symbolically, we see a lot of these cages. Now, maybe you would see that anyway with, birds being for sale, birds and rabbits, but they suggest a kind of virginity, that, these are also ways to keep women pure. But love is at work. And so in this kind of relief sculpture that sits at the bottom of this window where these women are selling things, a bunch of cupids who are having their a kind of, love fest, if you will, with the little goat there. So a bacchanal scene that is a scene of kind of, playfulness and excess, partying, that would again seem to suggest that the painter of this, or the viewer of this painting, was a little anxious about this activity that these women were engaging in, which is just, selling stuff. Honestly, I could go on forever about this, but any Dutch painting where you see a woman and the presence of a man or the presence of something, something that suggests romance or love or prick your ears up and try to decipher that meaning. This is Vermeer. It's that called the music lesson. Um, and of course, music is something that two people have to do together. So again, always a good subject to kind of read for extensive meaning.